I want to bring in our panel this morning, Iranian-American Dr. Sheila Nazarian. Also with us today, Jerusalem Bureau Chief for the Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman, and 2020 campaign National Security Advisor for the Trump administration, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Good morning to all of you. Thanks so much for being here. A lot to unpack just as we were coming to air. The president did truth. We'll get to it in a minute. But, Tony, I want to get to you on this. If you watch mainstream media, you would think that the blockade is a failure. Millions of barrels of oil have been sold by Iran now. CENTCOM is out with this new video, proof that U.S. forces have redirected 31 vessels to turn around. Also, we've boarded overnight. Navy SEALs took over 3 Iranian tankers, part of that shadow fleet that was trying to slip out and sell oil around the world. So as we come to air, Iran is pushing out messaging this morning that it is imposing these tolls on ships and continues boarding ships. The president truthed this just moments ago. If we could throw that up for the Lieutenant Colonel here. Here's the president's Truth Social post this morning as we came to air. I have ordered the United States Navy to shoot and kill any boat, small boats, though they may be their naval ships, he writes, all 159 of them, says they're at the bottom of the sea. But he's saying that these small boats are putting mines in the waters in the strait this morning, and that they are attempting to board some of these vessels. This is the message from the president, ratcheting up the rhetoric, saying we will take out these fast boats. The truth is they were kind of hiding in the crevices of the shoreline there. Is that correct?
Yeah. So first off, to your point, we just seized, at the time we're coming to air, the Majestic X, a Guyanan flagged ship that was on the prohibited list. It was shipping Iranian oil. And so we just seized that. And the small boats are an annoyance. And I've argued this is something the United States must do something to relieve the pressure. That is to say, because these are small boats, are very much just in harassment. The IRGC's fired on these big tankers. These tankers are 1,000 feet long. You can't do much with small arms with machine guns, but they do intimidate these unarmed tankers. And overnight, over the last few nights, the Iranians have seized MSC tankers, which are Greek tankers. Maybe NATO should have showed up to help out, just saying, since Greek's part of NATO. But the bottom line is President Trump is going to use our military capacity to reestablish confidence. That is to say, we're probably going to have A-10s doing combat air patrols. And these things are not hard to take out once you see them. But that's something we will do and do very rapidly over the next couple of days. I'm
curious, Alex, does this threaten this new message from the president? Does it threaten this, very precarious ceasefire in your mind?
Well, I think the ceasefire is in a very precarious situation and has been since the moment it was announced. We've seen that the Iranians have not yet even come to the table yet to sit. There are reports that the regime is completely fractured between multiple camps, between the Ayatollahs, between the military, and between the political apparatus, and there might be other factions as well. At this point, it's not even clear that any party that the United States sits down to negotiate with can actually deliver on a long-term ceasefire, let alone an actual accommodation toward a long-term peace.
Yeah, as of yesterday, the president had a very clear message. And it was interesting to watch yesterday, suggesting at one point there was a 3 to 5 day ceasefire extension. And then there was messaging out of the White House late in the day from Caroline Leavitt. Let's listen to her.
We want to see a unified proposal to the president's very strong proposal, and he's made his red lines very clear. Again, the United States maintains control over this situation, leverage over the Iranian regime.
So I'm curious, the president said he's under no pressure to end this thing, suggesting he's choking off every single last trickle of money flowing into Iran. They believe that's going to crush the regime. Dr. Nazarian, your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with the president's strategy. I think this is the most nonviolent way to choke off the regime and to give the people of Iran a chance to take their country back. He's choked off the Strait of Hormuz. They can't pay their thugs in the IRGC and the Besiege. And we hear of a lot of fracture within the Iranian government right now, and that's probably why they can't come to a negotiation. Although I think President Trump, for once, is a president that's using quote unquote negotiations as a stall tactic to economically choke off this regime, whereas this regime has technically used negotiation as a stall tactic in the past to see how far they can get away with whatever it is that they want to do. So fully support President Trump's this delay, and we'll wait it out and we'll give them more time. Every day, Iran is losing $500 million in oil revenue.
It is a huge price tag, and the president's mentioned it a number of times, that this is what will break this regime. Tony, I am curious about this news overnight that our Navy SEALs tracked down 3 Iranian tankers that were part of Iran's shadow fleet. One of them was in, I believe, in Chinese waters as well. Your take?
Right. So we're enforcing a global blockade. I think it's very clear that President Trump has instructed the U.S. Navy to do this. We have the Pacific forces now doing it, as you mentioned, Chinese water. We will not be deterred to shut down any ability of the Iranians to make money. And this is, as President Trump has said, the Venezuelan model on steroids, basically. We're doing what we did to Iran, what we did to Venezuela. We just can't go roll in and pick up the leader in 4 hours. This is going to take a bigger effort, and it is. So we will continue, as we've talked about, depriving the Iranian economy at least 500 million, probably more. The longer it goes, the more that gets bigger per day, because there's nothing coming in, and those promises of future revenue also drop off. So this is doing immense damage. I think we should have started with the economic blockade first, but we're here where we're at, and I think it's going to bring them to the table.
And meanwhile, there's a huge focus on the humanitarian issues on the ground once again. Dr. Nazarian, I know you've been quite vocal on this. Late yesterday, the president was on Truth Social talking about these 8 women celebrating and thanking the Iranian regime at one point, but said the alleged protesters who were going to be executed will no longer be killed. He said 4 of the released will be sentenced, 4 will be released, and then 4 will be sentenced to 1 month in jail. You've been very vocal, very active in this arena, calling really the world, Dr. Nazarian, you've been calling on the world to save these women. What do you know about them this morning?
Well, Shannon, we know that 2 of them are only 16 years old, and I'm really happy 4 of them are released, but those 4 that are in prison, God knows what's happening to them. You know, our family helped out one woman that was imprisoned when she was 17. When she came out at the age of 23, she had no teeth, she had no fingernails, and she walked with a 3-year-old daughter. So I am really still concerned about these 4 women that are going to be kept in prison. But I'm very, very thankful to President Trump for bringing in the humanitarian issue and demanding the release of these women.
And what the world really needs to know is what comes of them once they are released. Those soccer players, the Iranian soccer players who also, some of them chose to return to Iran. A soccer coach, she was an American. She had spent time with those U.S. soccer players. She was on National Update with Tracy Sable yesterday. Let's play that clip quickly.
Well, the 2 players that stayed there, they were my previous players as well. And that is true. They are receiving incredible amount of support. And I thank the Australian government for giving them that foundation to stay, and not just to stay, but to be able to continue playing as female soccer players there. And as for the rest that decided to go back, they chose to go back. I know that there were 7 total that decided to stay, but then 5 decided to go back. And I am keeping an eye, especially on their social media, to make sure that everything is okay.
Keeping an eye on their social media, but she says she has no record of what has happened to those women. Do you have any intel on that? And what happens to these women? Why do they decide to return? Is there a pressure on their families?
Yeah, there's pressure on their families. A lot of their families disappeared. They were taken. And some of the ones that wanted to stay actually changed their minds when they, heard from other relatives that their immediate family had been disappeared. So the regime just uses these brutal tactics, intimidation, just mental torture to the people of Iran for the last 47 years. And that's why no semblance of this regime staying in power will be acceptable to the Iranian people.
Alex, I want to get your take on these historic meetings. They continue in D.C., Israel and Lebanon at the table once again. They're set to meet this afternoon. The talks are discussing this extension of the 10-day ceasefire between the two. What are you watching for? What do you hope comes from this meeting today?
Well, Lebanon and Israel both have a shared goal, which is the total elimination of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not just to terrorize Israel, it's been holding Lebanon hijacked for more than 50 years. And basically, Lebanon is a failed state because of it. And it's been Israel's military campaign inside Lebanon has brought the Lebanese government. The two sides both saying that there are enough common ground here where they think a deal can be worked out on some of the more sensitive issues, including a land border, within the next 2 to 3 months. And I think that that's a good reason why the ceasefire could hold, because there is a will on both sides for there to be an accommodation. The only problem is that Hezbollah is not a party to the conversation.
Very quickly, Tony, before we say goodbye, I want to get your take. Navy Secretary leaves his job yesterday. The Undersecretary is going to take over. How does this affect? Navy's super busy right now around the globe. What do you make of the timing? Will it affect us?
No, I think most credible information out is that John Phelan was not producing the path forward the president wanted regarding the reinvigoration of the Navy industrial base. The Golden Fleet. I was there. Pete Hegseth invited me up to the kickoff of the Golden Fleet back in January at Newport News, Virginia. John Phelan apparently was not digging, the pace that they were going to go. Now, 𝐤𝐿, I know 𝐤𝐿, the new acting Secretary of the Navy. He's a great guy. He's a warfighter. No offense to John Phelan. John Phelan never served in the military. He was an industrial. He was a corporate guy, and that's fine. But I think 𝐤𝐿 is going to bring new energy and a warfighter's edge to that office. And I think it's a good thing. I know 𝐤𝐿, so just take that for what it's worth. I think it's a great choice, and I think we're moving forward in a positive way.
Well, in this network, your message, your voice, your thoughts are very valuable, Tony. Good to see you, Tony Shaffer, Dr. Sheila Nazarian, and Alex Traiman. Thanks for the great conversation this morning. Appreciate you all.